I want to do a quick introduction of Zachary Moore, who was very kind to come up here and share with us some new thought about the Freethought Church. He's their executive director. He was a relatively new fellow when he, new member of the church when he became the executive director, but he stepped up to the plate, and I think you'll hear from him. He has no apprehensions about belonging to a church, even as a non-believer, and has a very open mind and a very delightful disposition, and is one of the most responsible people I've met. I'm just proud that to be able to say that he's a new friend in my life. So, Zachary, come on up and tell us a little bit about the church.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank Marilyn for inviting me to speak with you. Very interesting people. The Unitarian Church is a very fascinating phenomenon, fascinating tradition, and it's I'm very much looking forward to sharing with you all something about free thought and atheism specifically. That's sort of the type of subject that I travel in, and oh gosh, that doesn't seem right. Let's there we go. As many things are, free thought and atheism are a lot larger in Texas. There's a lot of really interesting things going on, and I think it fits perfectly in the Texas tradition, the Texas culture, which I found just really fascinating. Texas is a beautiful state, especially about this time of year. Just these gorgeous bluebonnets come out, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio originally, so are there any native Texans here today? Yeah, so I have to sort of make the remark, well, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as quickly as I could. I find Texas fascinating. It has a really interesting history, a history that's based on individualism, on sort of banding together to face adversity together, which is a very important thing to do. It can be a very beautiful thing also. I'm thinking just looking at those bluebonnets, one would be beautiful enough, but just look at how gorgeous an entire field of them is when you get them all together and you get them assembled in a group. And I'm sort of seeing the same thing here with the assembled Unitarians and visitors here. So one of the other things about Texas, it's before the oil boom, the economy was based a lot on cattle. And so in order for these cattle owners to be able to tell their stock from the stock of other people, they would brand them. They would take a hot iron and press it to the flesh of these animals, and that was how you were able to tell who these cattle belonged to. And I think still in Texas today, there are a lot of people walking around that want to brand themselves with the brand of whatever particular religious tradition that they belong to, and they put a lot of stock in that, and they take it very seriously, and they can get in fights over what their brands may be, and they don't associate with people that have different brands. But there is also a Texas tradition that's associated with a man named Sam Maverick, and that's where we get the term maverick today. Sam Maverick refused to brand his cattle. And this may have been for a number of reasons, one of which could have been that he could claim any unbranded cattle as his own. But it's still very interesting, and it really embodies that sort of individualistic spirit, that Texan spirit of saying, you all can have your brands, but I am not going to brand myself. And it's perfectly fine to go about without a brand. And that sort of leads into talking about free thought and atheism. Aside from Sam Maverick, there's also a pretty long, storied tradition of freethinkers in Texas. This is downtown in Comfort, Texas, which is located in the gorgeous hill country between San Antonio and Austin. And that region was actually, I don't know if you were aware of this, but was settled by Germans who were freethinkers. They were called the Freie Gemeinde, that they left Germany. They were essentially kicked out of Germany because of their lack of any religious belief. And they came to Texas and they settled and they created these gorgeous towns here right in the middle of Texas. And an unfortunate fact of history is that they were largely kicked out during the time of the Civil War because as free thinkers, they rebelled against the common thought of the day that said slavery was not only permissible, but was advocated by God. In the Christian tradition, there are a lot of Christian ministers that were pro-slavery, and the freethinkers, the German freethinkers were against this and sided with the North on that issue, and were unfortunately and violently kicked out of the state because of that. But freethinkers are coming back, you know, and there's a lot of really great free-thinking traditions. And of course, here I am at a Unitarian Universalist church, and the UU movement has been extraordinarily free-thinking throughout its history. It's a tradition that's known for its tolerance. It's a tradition that's known for its promotion of questioning, of doubting, of seeking life's answers together. And that's something that I think all free thinkers share. And I don't think it's any surprise that there are Unitarian Universalist churches throughout the state of Texas, serving almost every metropolitan area, which I think is an incredibly good thing, including this church here in Lubbock. There are also a lot of specifically atheists and freethinkers in Texas today, and this is just a sampling of some of the groups. Up in Dallas, we have the Metroplex Atheists, and they're getting a little bit of TV coverage these days because they're mounting a billboard campaign. One of the ones that you may have seen in other cities, it shows a photograph of a cloudy sky, and it says, "Don't believe in God, you are not alone." And they're already starting to receive a lot of media attention simply from putting up a billboard, which happens all the time. Christian groups put up billboards all the time, and yet when the atheists do it, it's newsworthy. There's also the atheist community of Austin. They've been a very powerful and vocal presence for years and years and years. Of course, Austin is where the American atheists were essentially founded from. Mal and Murray O'Hare came out of that group. But Matt Dillahunty down in ACA has a closed-circuit public access show that is out. He's very active. We also have some student groups. The University of Texas Arlington has a very active free-thinking group, the Freethinkers of UTA. They're associated also with the Secular Student Alliance, which is sort of a blanket organization that helps student groups, the secular student groups form throughout the country. I also spoke just last week for the UT Dallas Atheists, Skeptics, and Humanists. They're also a very recent group. They just organized, actually, Rodrigo Neely from Lubbock here, organized that group and got them going. And we also have the Atheist Longhorns down at UT Austin and some other free thought groups in Dallas. It almost seems like if you actually do a little bit of research and look at where the atheist groups are and where the free thinking groups are, it almost seems like you're in the minority if you do not have an atheist group in your town. And it almost seems like you're in a minority if you're at a university or a college and you don't have some sort of a secular student group, because they are popping up just about everywhere, which is really encouraging to me. One of the reasons why this hasn't happened sooner, I think, there is, in many people's minds, you can even look up in the dictionary today and look up the word godless, and one of the definitions is an immoral person. And this is, dictionaries don't establish the definitions. Dictionaries just simply reflect the way that words are used. And I think the word godless is still being used in large part these days to mean bad people. And this little cartoon over here on the right or the left-hand side, the atheist, is some hulking monstrosity that's scary and it's going to rip up everybody and kill everybody. That is still how a lot of people think of atheists. There was just a very interesting study that was published from the University of Minnesota. It's published in American Sociological Review a couple of years ago. They asked people a couple questions. They gave them a lot of different social groups to pick and choose from, and they asked them the question, which group does not agree with your vision of an American society. And you can see here the red slice of the pie is the atheists, and that represents about 40%. So 40% of the people in this survey said that atheists are not representative at all of American society. And following closely after them are Muslims, homosexuals, and it goes down to the smallest sliver are white people, incidentally. There was another question that was asked in the survey. What group would you most disapprove of if your child were to marry a member of that group? Once again, atheists, the #1 chosen group that people would disapprove of if their child were to marry. Almost 50%, half the people out there would have a problem if their child were to marry someone who did not believe in a God. And again, we're followed by Muslims, and still in this day and age, African Americans, which is kind of shocking to me, actually. So this is the situation, this is the cultural landscape that we're faced with. This was just a couple of years ago. This is how people think about atheists and free thinkers. This is troubling to me as an atheist. So this should be troubling to any atheist or free thinker. Unfortunately, this has been the way it's almost always been. This is really nothing new. This is just new in terms of it's just been published. But we've all known that atheists have always been despised in society and always been looked down upon. That's not something that's really that different. And, you know, and just showing this confirms what we've known for a long time, but it doesn't really provide any sense of solace for that. What does provide some sense of solace is another survey that was just released a few weeks ago. This is the ARIS survey, the American Religious Identification Survey. And this survey was fielded in 1990. It was first fielded in 1990. It was also fielded in 2001 and just again in 2008. And what we see here is that back in 1990, nearly 90% of the population self-identified as Christian, and less than 10% self-identified as just having no religion at all. And we see this trend changing very significantly. From 1990 to 2001, there was a drop down to below 80%. It's about 76% right now. And from 2001, the people identifying as having no religious self-identification increased by about that same amount. And a lot of people in 2001, when this first came out, it made some news, and people thought, well, you know, this is just a statistical blip. You know, who knows if this is going to stay the same. Well, we look here at 2008, the same thing has happened. In fact, it's increased a little bit. So this was not a statistical blip. This is a real phenomenon. People are leaving the dominant religious tradition in this culture, and they're identifying as having no religious tradition. The next question then is, of course, well, what are they identifying as? Some of them are identifying as atheists, agnostics. Not all of them are. But a lot of them are. And it's interesting to look at the trends for those who consider themselves to be atheistic or agnostic. If you look at 1990, it was only about 1 million in the country. Just about the same number as there are Unitarians. And in 2001, that goes up. From 2001 to 2008, that is skyrocketing. Right now, in terms of religious self-identification, atheist agnostic is the fastest growing self-identification in the country, which is very encouraging, very interesting. But again, you know, this doesn't really say anything about whether or not this is a good thing for the culture, whether this is a good conclusion to come to, whether the answer of atheism is an appropriate answer. So I thought I might talk just for a couple of minutes about why I think it's at least a reasonable thing for people to consider. How do you, when you think of God, what pops in your mind? Is it something like on the left, this is from the Sistine Chapel, this is how Michelangelo represented God. And I think this is how most people think of God, as some old white guy with a flowing beard riding a cloud someplace. But that doesn't really make sense. You know, the Bibles, most of the religious traditions don't really talk about God looking anyway. They just say, well, you know, he has some sort of characteristics, but if you get down in theology, most Christians cannot justify a God that looks like this. You might just as well as say, well, God looks like this, and this is in fact how Matt and Trey from the South Park TV show, this is how they represented God, because why not? If he can look like this, he could just as easily look like this, a strange cross between a teddy bear, a cat, and some sort of an inbred hippopotamus. But, you know, God is God, and doesn't matter what he looks like, he still would hold the same power, right? Well, I just like showing this just because it plays with people's preconceptions. Most people, you know, think about God as some caring person sort of looking out for them. But there's something else to consider, and this is a philosophical problem that some of us wrestle with called the problem of evil. And I was just talking with some people earlier over in the reception area about cancer. And cancer is what I work in professionally. And cancer is an extremely problematic phenomenon for in the context of there being a God or not. If there is a God, why then does he allow people to go through such incredible pain and suffering, such as what people experience as they're going through cancer? And there's a philosophical riddle that was first voiced by the Greek philosopher Epicurus that says, well, is God powerful enough to prevent suffering? Then why does it happen? Does he desire to prevent suffering, but maybe he's just not powerful? Then why do we call him a God? Is he powerful enough to prevent suffering and also willing to do it? Then why are we worshiping this person? And so that's one big problem, at least for me, in terms of dealing with the concept of a God. And this is why I think it's very reasonable for atheists to come to their position. It's not just a reaction to, you know, people that had some bad experience in a church. There are good reasons for people to be atheists these days, more and more so as science progresses, and quite frankly, the jobs that were given for God to do in the past are now being done by natural phenomena, so God has less and less to occupy his time. One other thing that I want to suggest, and this is sort of in the context of, you know, looking at this lighting of the flame, which is, it's a great metaphor and a great symbol, and I think, of course, of Carl Sagan's Science as a Candle in the Dark, that sort of represents what is being done here. But a lot of people use their flames kind of in the same way as a campfire might, where they're sort of out. I'm kind of an outdoorsman. I know, Pete, you like going out. So anybody that goes out and lights a campfire, you're out there, it's dark, it's cold, it's scary. You want something to center your experience around, something to provide some warmth and comfort. And so you can build a campfire. And the campfire is great. It warms you up. It provides you light to see, and it helps you get through the night. The limitation of the fire is this. Although the fire illuminates those things immediately around you, it makes everything else beyond the firelight go dark. You cannot see anything else beyond the firelight. And this can be problematic, especially for those people that, that take their fires so importantly to the exclusion of anything else that might be out there. They can't even see it because they're just staring at that fire all night long. And I've done this occasionally when I go out. I'll, let my fire go out, and I'll just go through the night without one. And what's really remarkable is that once that fire goes out, I can see everything else so much better. The moon comes out, and it's shining down, and I can see, creatures moving in the dark. I can see all the trees, and I can see the reflection off the lake and the water. I can also better see other people's fires. So I can climb up to the top of a ridge in the middle of the night and look out and see all these fires dotting all over the landscape. And what sort of amuses me, or I appreciate at least, is that I can see their fires, but they can't see me. And I think that's part of the value of letting your fire go out, at least from time to time, and seeing what the world is like without that fire burning, without that faith burning. But that's just atheism. That's just sort of talking about atheism. And atheism is just talking about living without a God, or living a life where you don't know that there's a God. So, but what are you actually going to do? What are you going to put up in the place of these faith traditions, these worldviews that have been constructed? Well, that's where I think free thought comes into play. And my organization is the North Texas Church of Free Thought. So we center ourselves around this concept of free thought. And the way we like to think about what free thought is, it's this simple illustration. So thought, you're thinking about things. How are you going to think about things? How are you going to arrive at the conclusions about life, the universe, and everything? Traditionally, this has been done in most religious traditions by appealing to the tradition of that group, the authorities within that group, or some sort of established belief that acts as a foundation to that tradition. But we think that these are perhaps suboptimal, that the best way of figuring out the way the world works is not by appealing to tradition or authority or established belief. We think that instead we can look at evidence and reason. And that commitment to evidence and reason is the core of free thought. If you are operating in such a way that your conclusions are based only on the evidence of things that you see and can measure, and your own rational process, then you are a free thinker. And free thought is not so much a commitment to beliefs per se, because you can be a free thinker and believe just about anything. But free thought is about the process. So as long as you are operating by appealing to evidence and appealing to reason, you are a free thinker, as far as I'm concerned. And those are the type of people that we have with our organization. Now, one other thing is, since I mentioned there's a lot of people that they're no longer identifying, self-identifying as belonging to a religious tradition. And that can be seen as a positive to some. For me, it actually it worries me, because I think there are a lot of people that are just giving up whatever religion that they were born into, and they don't really know where to go yet. They're sort of like birds that are in a cage, and you open the cage, and the door is open, but they're so used to being in that cage that even though they have that option open to them, they don't know quite what to do with it yet. And so I think that one of the struggles over the next probably decade is going to be connecting with those people that consider themselves non-religious anymore, but are still looking for some sort of a community, some sort of a way of looking at the world that makes sense and provides them with meaning and morality and answers, or at least an approach that allows them to form answers that make sense. And that, I think, is where the North Texas Church of Free Thought comes into play. So we consider ourselves to be a rational approach to religion. We do call what we do a religion, and we do this primarily because we are approaching those same questions that all religious traditions are trying to answer. So questions about morality. How do we be a good person? How are we able to be good? Questions about meaning. What does it mean to be a human being? How do we find meaning in our life? And, questions about the big picture. Where did we come from? What are the origins of humanity? Where are we going? These are questions that are religious questions. They're metaphysical questions. I mean, philosophy touches on these from time to time, but fundamentally these are metaphysical questions. And these are widely regarded as religious questions, and so we consider what we do the business of religion, much in the same way that other churches do. And this is one of the reasons why we do call ourselves the Church of Free Thought. There are a lot of different options out there. We could have called ourselves the Community of Free Thought, the Group of Free Thought, North Texas Free Thinkers. But when the church was founded, what the two families that got together said, we really want a church, something very similar to what you all have here, where the shared community, you're sharing your hopes and your dreams and problems that come up. You're addressing these tough metaphysical questions. That is a church. There's really nothing else to call that. And yet we want to be centered on the concept of free thought. And so that's what we are. Now, this is just to further illustrate the point. Most people, when we first broach this with them, they think, Church of Free Thought, how in the world can you have a church? Well, churches are typically places where the gods live. And you might have any number of one of these gods living inside of this house. Or if it's a Unitarian, you might have them all over for a party at the same time. But we say we can keep the house and get rid of the gods. That's what we have. Most churches also have some people wearing some funny clothes that stand up in front of everybody and tell them what to do. And we think we can get rid of those people also. And so what do we put into place? Well, we educate each other. We get together on a monthly basis, and we learn about the world. We learn about history. We learn about science. We learn about philosophy and ethics. We go out and we try to do good in the community around us. We give blood. We clean up trash. We socialize. We get together at restaurants all the time throughout the month and just have a really great time getting to know each other, becoming fast friends with each other. And so that is really what we are. Essentially, we do what other churches do without the supernatural. So just take out the supernatural, and that is us. Some of the words that we try to live by, we try to work to understand and live by the rule of reason. We enjoy fellowship. We enjoy sharing our rational outlook and learning from each other. We try to serve something larger than our own egos. We try to care and help for others that are going through life's passages. And we try to demonstrate that the rule of reason and a love for this one life that we have, just like in the hymn that we sang before, loving this life is sufficient to find meaning and purpose in today's world. What don't we do? Well, we try not to tear down others' beliefs. We're not out to antagonize other religious traditions. We are simply there to promote free thought as the best option. We also don't oppose a diversity of opinions. We have people that have come to all sorts of conclusions on all sorts of issues. The political spectrum ranges from liberal to libertarian in our church, and that's because we're committed to free thought and not dogma. So as long as you're engaged in a practice where you can defend what you believe using evidence and reason, then you are perfectly fine with our group. Now I'll talk about some of the interesting things that we've done, particularly over the last year. We've had some really great speakers coming in. Lori Littman Brown, of course, Marilyn printed a photograph of her with our pastoral director, Tim Gorski, on the front of the bulletin there. We've also had Ellery Shemp, who is one of the most well-known Unitarians around. He, along with Madeline Murray O'Hare, helped get organized prayer out of public schools. He came in and gave a really great talk to our group about a year ago. And we've also had Dale McGowan, who is the author and editor of Parenting Beyond Belief, which is a really great book that teaches us how to raise children to be free thinkers, not necessarily to be atheists. Most of us don't really care if our children become believers or not. We just want to make sure that they are critical thinkers and appreciate free thought and appealing to evidence and reason. So we had a really great time having these guys over. We also have adopted a highway in Dallas, Texas, and we clean that regularly. It's Northwest Highway. It cuts right through the middle of the city, right through the most affluent area. Actually, it's near a big mall. And there are these two sort of Christian mega churches that flank us on both sides. So it's a lot of fun to go by and pick up the trash in front of their churches from time to time. Makes for some great photo ops. We also have supported some outreaches that are outside of our organization. So the Alabama Freethinkers have undertaken this Operation Foxhall Atheists, where they were actually getting items together to send to troops and military personnel in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we got together some things. Some of the things they asked for were National Geographic magazines and Maxim, so we obliged. We also gave them a copy of the Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, so hopefully they like that too. One thing that's coming up this month, we're actually going to be, some of our Some of our GLBT members have been complaining about Christian churches going to the gay bar district in Dallas and sort of giving them a hard time. And so we're going to go down Saturday night on the 18th of April, and mostly just to show solidarity with the people there and let them know that all churches are not opposed to simply the way they are, the way that they were born. And so we came up with the idea of printing up some custom condoms to hand out too, also because, I mean, it's a funny thing to do, but it also, there are a lot of churches out there that have this hate the sin, love the sinner attitude, where they say, well, we love you, we just hate what we do. And so this sends the message that no, what you do is perfectly fine, and please be safe while you're doing it. And the fact that this is coming from the church, I think, might help make an impact with that community. Outside of just sort of the Church of Freethought, some interesting things that have been going on that you might be interested in. The state of Texas had its first Freethought Convention last year. I don't know how many of you were aware of this, but over the year, last year, early in the year, a number of leaders from several atheist and free-thinking organizations got together and they started communicating. It's a novel concept. We should actually communicate with each other. And we started talking about, wouldn't it be nice if we could just get together in one place and have, kind of like a party. At first we were just talking about having a party, basically, at one place. And then we started thinking bigger. And we thought, well, what if we called it a convention and tried to recruit some people in and have them give talks and have it be a little bit more academic. And so that's actually what it turned into. So I pitched in a little bit, but it was mostly Paul Mitchell down in San Antonio who ran things, and also some people from the Corpus Christi Atheist Group. Yes, there is a Corpus Christi Atheist Group, as ironic as it may seem. There's actually more than 35 atheist and free-thinking groups in the state of Texas, which is very remarkable. And there's probably a lot more that I don't know about. There's more being formed every day. There's even one out in Tyler, Texas, in East Texas, which seems like, well, that's God's country out there. But at any rate, these are some pictures taken from the Freethought Convention. I was down there. I gave a talk. I was representing the Church of Freethought, passing out beers to people, trying to make friends. And people were getting together, talking from different groups. People brought their kids. There was face painting. It was great fun. And we had, this is Ana de Luna. She's an atheist from San Antonio, and she has a one-woman show called Chicana Atheist, where she talks about growing up as a Hispanic woman in a Hispanic Catholic family, where if you were not Catholic, you were nothing, right? And so it was a really powerful, emotional, just a really great experience down there at the convention. And so this year, it's going to be in San Antonio, and I hope some of you are able to make the trip down there. It should be a great time. In 2010, it will be coming to Dallas, so it might be a little bit easier of a trip for some of y'all. And I'm going to be taking some of the leadership reins in that. Also, Terry McDonald from Metroplex Atheists, we're going to be organizing that, and we have very high hopes. So please put that in a little mental note, 2010, probably in October sometime, close to Freethought Day, I would imagine. So mark your calendars for that. And finally, something that has just now, in fact, it hasn't even happened. It's going to happen tomorrow. So this is breaking news, literally. This is the DFW Coalition of Reason billboard. And I was mentioning this to some people earlier. This is a billboard that will be placed in Dallas, Texas, and in Fort Worth, Texas, starting tomorrow morning. Don't believe in God, you are not alone. To my knowledge, the only atheistic, it's not even promoting atheism, it's just saying, look, if you don't believe in God, then you're not the only person that's out there. And this is, I think, it's a really powerful message because for myself, I grew up in a Christian tradition, and I went through this process of apostasy. And I've talked with a lot of other people that went through the same thing, and they experienced this intense loneliness as you're going through this process, because if you're questioning the validity of the Bible, or you're questioning the existence of God, and you're sitting there in a Christian church and all these other people singing along and praying, and if you can't take that seriously anymore, then you feel incredibly alone. If you look up while everyone else is praying and you're the only one with your eyes open, that can be very terrifying. And so this message really goes out to those people, the people that I mentioned earlier in the ERA survey that are identifying as non-religious. And this is letting them know that there is actually something out there for them. They don't have to just wallow in fear by themselves. They can actually connect with other people. And so we had a meeting. This is myself, Terry McDonald, Meredith from the Fort Worth Freethinkers, and Fred Edwards from the American Humanist Association. He's working now with the United Coalition of Reason to help plant these sort of coalitions in different states and different cities throughout the country. And so starting Monday, we will have a DFW Coalition of Reason. DFWCOR.org will be the website. It goes live on Monday morning. And what that will do is, of course, it will tie into the billboard, so millions of people will be seeing this billboard and logging onto this website. And when they do, they will see the North Texas Church of Freethought there listed. They will see Metroplex Atheists. They will see the Fort Worth Freethinkers. They will see every single secular, non-theistic group that wants to be a part of this coalition. They will see them there as an option. So they will say, this is something that I can plug into. This is some community where I can find fellowship, where I can find people that think like me. And I'm incredibly excited about this, if you couldn't tell. And I'm very much looking forward to working with Terry and Meredith and some of the other people locally, because we've all sort of been in our little islands, and we've had great times and cultivated some great friendships. But just like I was talking about before, when you see that field of bluebonnets, you see that all together, how much more beautiful that looks. And so I'm just thinking of all the things that we can do if we just talk to each other, if we organize, if we do some, get together and have some group activities. Maybe if I'm going down to the bars, maybe the Metroplex Atheists want to come too and show their solidarity. And be totally open for that. So I'm incredibly excited about this, and I think this is going to make a big difference in Dallas-Fort Worth, and I think it can make a big difference in lots of other cities. They're planning on founding coalitions of reason also. They have one in Philadelphia, another one in Colorado, and they want to plant about 30 over the next 5 years. So look for a lot more of this to happen. So that's about all I have. Like I said, it's bigger here in Texas. There's a lot going on. We've got the DFW Coalition of Reason, we've got the Freethought Convention, and groups springing up all over the place. So thank you very much for having me.